welcome everyone here to Episcopal Relief and Development's webinar on their new program, the Episcopal Asset Map. This is a joint webinar of the Episcopal Relief and Development as well as Episcopal Church Foundation. I am here representing the Episcopal Church Foundation and would love to just share a little bit about what ECF is. ECF is an independent, lay-led foundation whose mission is to strengthen congregations, dioceses, and other agencies through strategic leadership and financial capability building. Through our programs, we are trying to build a church where lay and clergy are working together to transform the church. We want to see a church of healthy, vital, vibrant congregations. We want to see multiple opportunities for meaningful Christian stewardship, as well as innovative and mission-based ways to be the church of the future. And I think Episcopal Relief and Development's Asset Map is a really great example of the latter, of an innovative and mission-based way to be the church of the future. I would love to share just a few technical notes so that we're all on the same page around using this webinar technology. I mentioned a little bit earlier that as people sign on, sometimes we get some audio interference in the background, and so if I may have to mute folks just to continue with the presentation. So if you get a message that you've been muted, please know that it's not personal. It is just trying for us to continue with the presentation forward. If you have questions, the easiest way to ask them during the presentation is to type your questions into the chat box on the lower right-hand side of the screen. There will also be times during the webinar in which we'll invite conversation, and I will make an effort to unmute you, anyone at that point. If you look at the toolbar on the very top, there's a little guy raising his hand. So if you have a particular question that you'd like to ask and you've been muted, just use that to alert me and I will unmute you. And we will be able to have a conversation that way. We get a lot of questions about whether or not PDFs of the slides are available. They are. I'm going to just point them out to you right now. Just to the left of where the green arrow is, you can click on that file and download a PDF of these slides that will be available for today. Also, I want to point out web links on the left, again, just to the left of the arrow. There's a link to the Episcopal Asset Map, as well as an example that's going to be spoken of a little bit later, the Diocese of Louisiana's Asset Map. And then the last thing I want to just let you know is that this webinar is being recorded, and barring any significant technical difficulties, we really would love to make it available on our website, ECF Vital Practices, as well as make it available for Episcopal Relief and Development for all their purposes. So just bear that in mind that we are recording this webinar this evening. And with that, I would love to just hand it over to Katie and Tamara, who are our main presenters.
Let us pray. Ever-living God, whose will it is that we all should come to you, inspire us to be active members of the Jesus movement. May we acknowledge the many gifts and resources you have given us to be your hands in the world. Amen.
Amen.
And that was inspired from our presiding bishop's sermon on Sunday.
So I'm going to start us off, and then I'm going to hand the baton over to Tamara. I know some of you, but don't know everybody. My name is Katie Mears. I'm the director of the U.S. Disaster Program at Episcopal Relief and Development. And Tamara is our newly hired coordinator for this asset mapping project. So I've been in the weeds a little bit with this one for the last couple of years. I am not going to read to you about the mission of Episcopal Relief and Development, I promise. But I wanted to make sure this was in there just to give a little bit of broader context about who we are as an organization and how this fits into what we do. We are an independent 501c3 that is affiliated with the Episcopal Church. And what we're up to is being the healing a hurting world through the Anglican Communion around the world and through the Episcopal Church here in the U.S. And in our other Episcopal Church country partners. That's especially useful as we connect to asset mapping, because in order to work through the Anglican Communion, it helps if we know what kind of capacities we have in our Episcopal churches. Around the world, we do a bunch of different things. We have hunger programs, we have economic opportunity programs, we have health and disease programs, and we also respond to disasters and rebuild communities. And that's the piece that we focus on here in the U.S. We don't work by, it's not that when a disaster happens, Tamara and I load up a helicopter and come to your diocese and respond to your disaster for you. We work through the network of the church, as that mission slide said. And so our role is to connect, inspire, and equip our diocesan partners to do the ministry that they're called to do, and especially here in the U.S., preparing for and responding to disasters. And all that sort of led to the development of this asset mapping platform. One of the veins that runs through a lot of the work that we do around the world is this idea of asset-based community development. And I know there are much more complicated ways to talk about this idea. So if you have, a graduate degree in ABCD, then, bear with me because this is much, much simpler. But the idea is just that an asset-based program is one that focuses and is built on the gifts and capacities of the people, not on the problems that they might have. So instead of seeing a community as, poor and with no water and with 40% unemployment, an asset-based approach looks at that community and sees that it has 60% of the population that does have work for pay, and it has a big portion of the population that would have the capacity to do all kinds of things, but might not be being well utilized at this point. It sees the capacity instead of focusing on those deficits. And the idea is that through focusing on those capacities, you're able to then create more vibrant programs. It's not just about us from the outside telling other people what all their problems are and how to solve them, but being in conversation with the community to figure out how they have their own capacities locally. Here in the US, that means we do a lot of things on the disaster response side. We help folks prepare for and respond to disasters through working with church ministries. We provide tools to coordinate volunteers. You'll see the mapping assets language, which I'll come back to in a second. We create conferences and other training programs to connect diocesan leaders as they prepare and respond. And then we provide necessary funding resources, especially on the response side. When I took this job 6 years ago, I got the strategic planning language, and it included mapping assets and developing a database of the ministry capacity of the Episcopal Church. And it was very clear that was going to be a huge challenge because it's such a moving target. Churches open, churches close, food banks open, food banks close. It's incredibly important to know that information, but how do we get a sense of what it is, even on a diocesan scale, let alone on a national scale? So we started a conversation with the Episcopal Church and created a partnership. And we're working in partnership with the Episcopal Church to develop this platform. The idea is that it is a way to capture those capacities and take a more asset-based approach. So we all are really good at telling the story of the deficits of the Episcopal Church. I bet a lot of us have heard that on Sunday, sort of over coffee hour, about all the challenges our churches are facing. But the idea is that this platform is a place to talk about all the stuff we're doing. What are all the gifts that we actually have? And to zoom that out outside of the silos of our congregations and our dioceses and to look across diocesan lines. And then in terms of my own sort of selfish purposes, this is incredibly useful in terms of preparing for disasters, even if we don't actually talk about that very much when we're actually using the map in the church. If we knew where all the food banks were in the U.S. or knew where all the Spanish language congregations were in the U.S., that would be incredibly useful for disaster response. But that's not usually the motivating force for folks to actually populate the information. So again, the ideas of this map is that it's grassroots populated. What that means is that it's not up to us in our offices at the national level to keep track of where there's a new sign language congregation or where there's a new food pantry. That's happening on the congregational level, but that it's being checked by folks at the diocesan level. So someone that the bishop appoints is appointed to be the approver that can say, yes, that is a new ministry. Yes, that is a new church. That's happening at the diocese level. One of the other principles of the map is the data is housed at one location, so that as information is being changed, it's coming back to episcopalchurch.org, even if it's being displayed in lots of different places. And then the sort of overarching goal is to highlight all the kinds of outreach, even if outreach is a challenging word, however you think about it, highlighting the mission of the church across the silos that we all have found ourselves in. The first pilot we worked with was the Diocese of Louisiana. We'll talk a lot about them tonight, not because, because I like Louisiana a lot. I worked for the Diocese of Louisiana before I moved to New York in 2009. And Karen Mackey in the Diocese of Louisiana was incredibly instrumental into getting this whole project started. She figured out what kind of information would be most useful for them and then gathered it, and then worked with our developer to figure out how we could display the information that she would need. The basic pins you can see on this screenshot, and we'll go into lots more detail, but that there are churches, there are schools, there are other kinds of institutions all on here. Each of these pins you can search on, you can click on and get more information in a little pop-up. And then if you want even more information, you can click on the name and get a whole page of information. It's all searchable, so it's very tiny, I know, but you can search different pieces here. And whether it's by keyword or by the kinds of ministries that they have. So we worked with Louisiana extensively and then did a second pilot in the Diocese of New York. It's an incredibly different ministry context. So from the south to a big diocese that ranges all the way from Staten Island and Manhattan all the way up to relatively rural Orange and Dutchess County north of New York City. So we had done that pilot, and then we had two incredible Episcopal Service Corps interns, Dane Miller and Ethan Lowry, that were with us last year. And they were dramatically more successful than we could have hoped. They got us to 87 dioceses in the U.S. By the end of their service in end of August. So that's sort of where we are, the big picture. Tamara is going to sort of take you on a little tour in a moment. But do you have questions about the big picture, sort of where we were, why we're here, who we are?
Great. And again, probably the easiest way to ask a question is in the chat box on the lower right-hand side of the screen. If you'd like to raise your hand, that's on the top toolbar as well. So let us know if you have any questions.
See some typing. Great question about when we're extending it to Province 9 in the Dominican Republic. We know that needs to happen. We developed the surveys for a very specific U.S. ministry context, and I want to make sure that we're not sort of pushing all those questions that are developed for our context outside of an American context. We're working closely with our international program team at Episcopal Relief and Development. They've started the piloting process with the Diocese of Columbia. Julius, we can follow up with you offline because it seems like a second pilot in the Dominican Republic would make a lot of sense. Kelly and the folks in the church in Columbia are working on making sure that the translations and questions have been tweaked. And so we'll continue to have that conversation. Great. I'm excited that you guys are ready. It sounds like you have a really complete data set already, which is great. Matthew, how are the initial data collection completed, and how do we decide on the categories? That is the, the $1,000,000 question. The first data set was completed just with an elaborate Google form, actually. And Karen asked a lot more questions than we could actually fit into what became the final survey and the final site. There was a lot of, the first round, she wanted there to be 20 of the things that I call the ministry buckets. So the sort of those top categories of ministries. But it was really unwieldy to have, snack bags and sit down meals. They sort of had divided all those up very finely. And so we pushed them to create broader umbrellas. And it seemed like it actually worked. In a broader umbrella, what is a snack bag and what is a bag lunch and what is a meal program? We were able to sort of create bigger groupings. And then when we brought it to New York, we ended up adding, like, shelter and housing was not a ministry type in Louisiana. So we added that after coming to New York. And then once we went national, the advocacy type we added in conversation, I think, with Chicago and maybe a few of the other early pilots. And we've continued to develop them. I'm hesitant to continue to add new buckets, just in that it will get unwieldy. But that conversation is still one that's absolutely there. The workaround that Tamara will show us in a minute is that it's all keyword searchable. So if you're interested in veterans issues, or you're interested in particularly homeless issues, not just sheltering, you can search for that keyword and then are able to pull up your survey results even if they're not actually in that bucket. Does that make sense? Great. And I'm happy. I've been in the weeds on this and the sort of blow by blow, that I'm happy to have more detailed follow-up technical conversations with folks offline if that's helpful. Yeah, I think it's you.
So it's me. So how does this work? If you want to try this while we're online, you can go to episcopalassetmap.org. We can't wait to see a Methodist assetmap.org. So cool beans. You can search by diocese, a network, or just church-wide generally. As Katie said, there's 3 pin options. Actually, there are 4. But there's a church, a school, and then other. And other could be anything from a monastery to a community center to whatever. If it's not a church, it's not a school, it's another. I also want to note that there are things that are owned by multiple dioceses. So, for example, there is a camp in California that is owned, I believe, by the Diocese of San Diego and the Diocese of Los Angeles. But it is physically situated in the Diocese of San Diego. So the approver for all the assets and the updating of that site is done by the Diocese of San Diego. So things might be owned or kind of independent and maybe not even legally owned by any diocese in the Episcopal Church, but that asset would be under the guise of the administrator of that diocese. So even 815 would be under the guise of the Diocese of New York, because technically or physically within the Diocese of New York. So once you get to a PIN, you'll get an overview profile of that PIN. You can take a survey, add additional information to it. Because this is all crowdsourced information, so there is no limitation on who can and cannot take a survey. The editing will happen at the diocesan map administrator level. So once people submit information, it's reviewed by the diocese-appointed map administrator. There's usually about 3 so that they can spread the work around. And then that updated information appears on the map once it's been approved. and it appears in that diocesan page, but it also appears on any other church, any other view of the map. So everything is really just housed in one large database. So let's explore the map. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. So if we go here, there we go, we get to the home page, episcopalassetmap.org, and you can see that there are pins in places outside of the United States. Those are based on the red book the Episcopal Church has about all the congregations that we know about. In addition, other network ministries have given us information, and so we've also added that information to the map. So there are pins in places like Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic and Venezuela and Colombia, Central America. So those pins exist, so people know that they are part of the Episcopal Church. They just are not populated yet. The only place that we have just started on an international basis is in the convocation of churches, of Episcopal churches in Europe. So you can go ahead and search the map by church-wide map. That would take you to this page. I was looking at a Dominican Republic church right there. And there's key term searches, search by term. So you could type in a word here, hit update, and learn about all the places that have knitting, for example. You can also go to view an Episcopal Church network map, where you can choose from some already signed on networks. So all our children, campus ministries, Asian American ministries, etc. You can also explore by your diocese, which we're going to do right now. We're going to go to the Diocese of Louisiana. And I've already pulled up their map. So the Diocese of Louisiana, when you click on that link, it would take you to this page. This is a diocesan page. This is kind of their home button. This would take you to the Diocese of Louisiana's diocesan page, their website. This also links back to DFMS, and this links to Episcopal Relief and Development. So as you can see, there's churches, St. Mark's Episcopal Church. Some basic information pops up when you immediately click on a pin. Close that. You can see there's also an additional button. It's the green button. So green blobs mean that there are two entities in one location. So for example, at this site, it's St. Patrick's Day School and St. Patrick's Episcopal Church. And they're at the same address, but they're two different entities. So, and then also there are schools. And there's an other button. So a conference center, Solomon Episcopal Conference Center. And then we're going to just zoom in because I want to visit one church in particular down in the lower 9th Ward. And I click on that. All Souls Episcopal Church and Community Center. I click on that. It loads up that. It still keeps the diocesan branding up at the top. And then you scroll down, you'll see their video clips on the side that they've uploaded. They have the name of their rector, a contact person, a contact email, website, a little image, service times, their language that they normally worship in, a little history about the church. And then they divided up their ministry projects. They have a pantry, a sewing class, a summer program, tutoring, housing, a violin ensemble. So there's some pretty cool things happening at All Souls. Seems like there's a lot of conversation. I just wanted to check. So I'm just going to click on one of these videos. And I want to learn about them, and I just click that.
And you're muted.
So that's like a super cute video of this awesome kid who's enjoying the after school program. I click that and I head back to their page. And I can watch other videos. I could then even suggest some things, like maybe I know that they have a service that starts at 5 o'clock in the evening. I could go ahead and add on and suggest that. I also just want to talk quickly about this top bar. When you're in a diocesan page, so you see edola.episcopalassetmap.org, that is actually a completely different, it's the same site, but it's almost its own site. So when you hit home, it'll take us not back to the original Episcopal Asset Map, it'll take us back to the Diocese of Louisiana's map. And then let's explore a little bit the diocese. I'm from the Diocese of Long Island, and so I know, for example, that there's a new dean at the cathedral because it's my former rector. So I'm going to try to find that cathedral. I'm just going to type in. Oops, I think Katie's talking to folks. So 1 mile from, I'm going to put Garden City because that's where it is. I'm going to say update map. That's the only one left because it's within 1 mile of Garden City. Cathedral of Incarnation. I'm going to click on that. And I see that they have not added any information about their new dean, which saddens me because he's my former rector. So I'm going to go ahead and take the survey. This big red button. I'm scrolling down, and I say contact person, Reverend Michael T. Smithson. And he is the dean. And then I'm going to continue scrolling down. And I just want to point out again, see, we're in Long Island's map, so it's edli.episcopalassetmap.org. And I also want to maybe add in their service times because they're not there. But if I go to their website, I could literally just copy from their site their service times. And I'm going to paste it in there. And I'm going to keep scrolling down. That's all I feel like doing for right now. I'm scrolling past their ministries. And you can see you can add up to 16 different ministry projects on this site. I'm going to say it was last updated by Tamara Plummer. And then because we don't want there to be kind of ghosts attacking the site and making up information and trying to stick advertisements in there, you have to do math. So use the math. I believe that 2 plus 2 equals 4. I'm so proud of myself for not needing a calculator. Hit submit. And then you'll see that your submission has been sent to the Asset Map Administrator. The Asset Map Administrator will then review that information and then either approve it or deny it or edit it as they know it to be true. And then it will, once that is approved, it will appear on the Episcopal Diocese of Long Island map. And then the last thing I just want to show you all is that you could also add in, I'm going to go back to the Diocese of Long Island homepage. So let's say I want to add a video to my home parish, my home church. So I'm going to add media. I'm going to add a video story. And I found this YouTube video of our priest preaching on a Sunday after we had a fire. So I'm going to copy that link. I'm going to go ahead to this video. I'm going to paste the link for the video. Call it Father Michael sermon. It says affiliated church, so that would be St. Luke and St. Matthew. A night is Christmas after a fire. And then I'm going to scroll down again, do a little math, and hit save. And that also has been submitted to the same administrator. So those are just some highlights of the map. The last thing I want to highlight, though, yeah, those are the highlights I want to highlight for now. But I do like to type in knitting and hit update map. I find it fascinating to see all the places that have some knitting ministries all throughout the country, up in Maine, over here in San Francisco, in California, and Nevada. So that's the general map. But I'm going to pause for a second because I see a lot of conversation, so I want to allow some time for some questions. Can you unshare me? Or wait, I can unshare me. Yep. So stop sharing. Okay.
Great. So Tamara, you said that you'd like to pause for questions. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I know that Katie's been answering some, but I just wanted to take a minute. Oh, let me just talk about this before we actually pause for questions. The last piece, and then I'm going to just show my screen one last time, is that we are really wanting to highlight the networks of the church. So for someone to be able to see how Jubilee ministry is living in the church, how Asian ministries are living in the church, the Episcopal Conference of the Deaf, for example, is a really great piece. I didn't even know that there were this many congregations that had sign language. And again, those networks, while they show a international, national, all kinds of options, looks at the church, those individual pins still are owned by the diocese, which is something to keep in mind. So can we just share my screen just one more time, and I'll go ahead and show one of the network maps. So I would just go to the main page, Episcopal Conference of the Deaf. And you can see, like, there's St. Hilda's here. Oh, that's St. Paul's. St. Hilda's is in Oregon. Ooh, you won't let me click it. Let me get a little closer. Okay. All Saints? It is the St. Hilda's. The Episcopal Church of the Deaf. There you are, St. Hilda's. And if I click on there, and I click on them, you can see that their regular language of worship is actually ASL, and it shows that they have interpretive services on Sundays at 10 a.m. So that's just one option. It looks very much like any other map, but it is by network. So after that, I will now go ahead and have us answer any questions. There was a question about companion diocese. And then, Katie, are there any questions? You've been moderating, so do you want to highlight any of these questions that were happening while I was sharing the screen?
Twyla asked a great question about sort of saying that she thought that a congregation might want to think about this before they started typing stuff into the map. And did we have a document for that? I mean, I shared with her the link. We have a sort of version of our preparedness planning template that sort of puts all these questions in one Word document. If you're the kind of church that wants to study up and get all the answers in one place and then enter it, I would encourage sometimes people, just your congregations. If your congregation is likely to see that document and then panic and decide to do it next year, I would encourage you not to share that document. But if you think that that document will actually help people fill it out, then go for it. I think sometimes people think of this as a really big project, and so don't get started. And because you can always fill out more information later, I'd rather have a little bit, do a little bit every week would be great.
You could start by just, like on a Sunday, having someone stand in the back of the church or walk around coffee hour and ask one question of people, like, when are our service times? And just put in your service time and hit submit. And then maybe the next week you want to tackle one ministry project and maybe sit down with someone who's running a specific ministry project and talk to them about what that ministry project is. And also I think it gets a culture of storytelling that's empowering for people. As Katie said earlier, we often feel like we do nothing. And then I will work with parishes, with churches in Diocese of Long Island who will tell me, oh, we don't have any way to connect with young people at our church. And I say, well, tell me about some programs that you do. And they say, we do an Easter egg hunt where 100 little children come and do an Easter egg hunt. And I say, so are the doors of the church open when you do the Easter egg hunt? No, it wasn't open, right? So we can start to be like, to say, oh, you have an Easter egg hunt. That's an asset. That's something that is important to your congregation that you already do. That's great. That's a ministry that reaches out to a lot of people. That's awesome. So let's put that on the map. Let's talk about it. So it's also a great way to start to get people to talk about their ministry, their outreach, their programs. Also, if you're writing a grant and you have this data, you don't have to go back and ask a bunch of people all kinds of questions. So you already know the data that you need to answer many questions for grant writing, even in this database. So I think that's also, for folks thinking about fundraising and things, that's also an asset to them.
Absolutely. Other questions about just sort of basic, sort of how to do it, how to click around, how to find what you're looking for?
Okay.
Excellent.
Awesome. So there are, of course, possible risks to this project, right? There could be out-of-date information. And what we try to tell folks to do to discourage that is to integrate it more into the diocesan network. So I earlier sent an email to the Diocese of Louisiana saying I might be accidentally typing in bad information into your map because we're doing this webinar. And Karen wrote back and said, oh, no worries. I'm just taking all our, recently they did their diocesan, their congregational surveys. And so she just took the survey that she was updating for their database and was updating the map at the same time. So it's just a part of how they function as a diocese. And then there are other dioceses that have different practices. So there's a network of people where we share the best practices for administrators. And then also just having a team of volunteers, people that we all know the 20 folks in our diocese who know everybody. And they know every church, and they've been to every church, and they come to every training. As much as there's kind of the faithful 40 of a congregation, there's also a faithful 40 of the diocese. So having those folks who just want to make sure that their church is always up to date and they want to take that on is a great way to make sure that you don't have outdated information. And then when it comes to false information, I think some people think that there's going to be a barrage of false information and bots tackling because it's on the internet, bots can often tackle websites. But actually, we've seen maybe 2 advertisements in the time that this has been up. So, and those got caught and they weren't posted, and so there's really a great deal of stopgap so that people can't just attack the site. And then we have some strategies for populating the map. I think that conversation's already started, so just go ahead and fill out a survey for your congregation right after this call. And maybe you know about congregations near you Katie likes to say, in the Episcopal Church, we often think that there's a lot of polity. So I can't fill out the map. That's not my place. But if you know that the congregation down the street speaks in Spanish at 10 a.m. services, please go ahead and add it to the map. It's a grassroots asset-based approach. And so if you have assets in filling out surveys and getting connected to congregations in your area, please do so. And then if you see things that are missing, please submit them. There's a contact on the main page that says, I don't see it, I don't see my PIN, and you just click that and it'll give you instructions. You can make some videos of ministry projects just to spice up your page. Just literally iPhone. There's some on here that are just iPhone or just a phone video uploaded to YouTube and then uploaded to the map or some other video platform. Engage young people. This is kind of the season of diocesan conventions, and as someone who often works with youth, we look for ways to kind of make sure that youth delegates are still invested and involved. This would be awesome to have. Maybe one diocese said that they were printing out the surveys and then could have their young people kind of walk around convention, and then they had a group of volunteers who are willing to then put the data in and approve it at the same time, so that by Tuesday morning after convention, all that information would be up on the map. So that cross-generational communication would be a great option. And then having incomplete information is actually quite motivating. So if a congregation does not have a deaf-speaking population and does not have ASL services, and that happens to end up on their map, it is often a motivating thing for people to then go fill out. We do not encourage putting false information on the map, but it's often motivating because people are looking to this already as a way to find congregations, to find places where they know they may find folks that are similar to them. So it is already even being used for church searches for people to figure out where they want to be connected. So yeah, we encourage you to fill out the map. That's kind of our phase. And then if all else fails, you can make super cute babies fill out the map, because I just love these images. And then, of course, there are 12 dioceses in the national church not signed on. Province 9, we have much love for you, and we are deep in our thoughts and prayers each day. But there are Eastern Oregon, Utah, Hawaii, Milwaukee, Arkansas, Alabama, Florida, Delaware, Washington, Newark, Central New York, and Western Mass. And then if you want to type on the side, if you can figure out which province is fully represented, I'll figure out a good prize to give you by the end of this presentation. So if you are one of those 12, we'd love to have your diocese on board. And so please contact me as soon as you can. And then I found this image and I thought it was pretty hilarious. But this could be your next diocesan council meeting, where these are there's folks saying, why would we do this? And there are folks saying, we have to do this now. And there are folks saying, I'm not in it. So you get to have that conversation with the computer and Jesus. And then how we offer support. So my job is to provide, on a diocesan level, technical assistance so that things break down at the website. We have to fix things, fulfill dreams and hopes of people around technical needs. We train people on how to use the site, how administrators can use the site. We do one-to-one coachings on how to think through a good plan for your diocese. Every diocese is different. Every diocese has a different culture. So I'm here to support that process. And then I also am here to facilitate sharing of best practices. There are other dioceses that have been, Diocese of Louisiana has been doing this for 2-3 years now. Katie? Yeah. So they have a lot of knowledge to share. There are other dioceses like Olympia who have a lot of capacity around technology. There's several dioceses across the country that have a lot of information on how to best meet the needs of the map. And then also with data entry assistance So right now, the pins that are on the map are all Episcopal entities that we know of. So again, if you know of more, please tell us. And then what we need from you is please take a survey. Spread the word on social media. So go on Facebook and share your map, or share your pin for your congregation or your nursing home. Go on Twitter, hashtag Episcopal Asset Map. Talk about it at coffee hour on Sunday. That would be amazing. Maybe make an announcement. I'm not going to stop you. And then volunteer to help someone else fill out a map if they feel like they don't have the capacity to do so. All that to say, we have gotten through all of our slides. I'm going to offer it up for some conversation, feedback. We love to, this is again asset-based community development, right? So the map happens because people tell us things. Like, I need an embed code for my website, or I want to see the map do this, or I want to see the map have an emergency mode, or whatever it is. So if you have any feedback or any questions, we're here for the next 15 minutes to answer them.
Great. And again, just questions can be asked in the chat box, or if you'd like to have a conversation, just above where the green arrow is now is the yellow, is a raise hand signal. So if you have comment, please just raise your hand, and I will attempt to unmute you, and we can see how it goes from there. I'll start us off with one comment, which is I have a good friend in the Diocese of Long Island who is interested in health ministries and has been wondering how to find out about health ministries in the Diocese of New York and Long Island. And so while we were on the webinar itself, I sent him the link to Episcopal Asset Map and just encouraged him to filter for it. And it was really great to hear that New York and Long Island are both places that had, been piloted, or rather New York was, so that to know that has a lot of good information in there.
And then something
one other.
Sorry, you want to go ahead? I was going to just say the blue. So if you're in a diocese and you put in health, all the health things will pop up in blue in that diocese, and then gray will pop up in the diocese around it. So if you want to do something can I share my screen again? I'll just do So I'm going to go to just the Episcopal Asset Map. So I'm going to, so if I do, if I go to the Diocese of Louisiana and I do veterans, it has to go. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Oh, it's not going to show me it. Okay, yeah, it is. So it's showing me the 2 places that work with veterans in Louisiana, but then it's also showing me gray dots in Tennessee and in Georgia. So the Church of the Atonement has some resources for veterans as well.
And that's especially useful if you happen to be in a diocese or in a area that is a sort of border community. So I know, like, the city of Richmond, it's 2 dioceses right next to each other. Here in the New York metro, you have several dioceses in one area. The Bay Area has a lot. And we've all been so siloed in our diocesan bounds that one of the things that this search allows you to do is it forces you, it automatically searches outside of your diocesan boundaries. So even if you don't mean to, if you're looking for a community garden in Brooklyn, it's going to show you the ones in Manhattan and Staten Island. Like it sort of automatically searches the area, not just your diocese.
Great. Other comments or questions from those? Okay, I see Matthew has his hand raised. All right.
Okay. So regarding the national networks, I know that, for instance, you may be looking at the Episcopal Conference of the Deaf, and let's say that you're not so much looking for a parish that is near you, but you want to link out to, or you want to find the resources that that national organization or network provides. Is there a link for the networks? Is there a link to sort of their national homepage?
There should be if we had the logos. That's sort of like we have the tech in place, we just don't have it done.
Okay.
So if you look at, I think Episcopal camps and conference centers is done right, and for some reason we don't have the Episcopal Conference of the Deaf set up yet. But in the same way that with the diocese, there's a diocesan shield, there should be a logo for the network.
Gotcha.
And if there isn't, that's on us.
That a lot of times their resources are housed on that one national website. Not so much, you wouldn't necessarily find anything on the individual parish site.
Yeah. So the Episcopal Camps and Conference Centers one, which I just chatted, that one is correct. It has their tree logo, and then you go to their website.
And then there's also a question about how to be in conversation. I think that's a growth edge for us to continue to think about, how to be in conversation with dioceses or with networks and their web presence, because we are kind of the bigger database, but people have look and feels for their own subset. So it's a continued conversation about how to be in relationship with each other.
Other questions?
Pam, I don't want to, feel free to say you don't want to talk, but I know that you've sort of had some successes and had some challenges with getting the map populated. And I didn't know if any of what you've experienced would be helpful for the group. I also know you're on a mobile device, so I don't know if that's easy.
Yeah, what we did is the bishop's communications officer entered all of the basic information for each of the parishes in the state. And so Nevada should be pretty well populated, at least with basic information. Now we're at the point where we have one church, for instance, that literally picked up and moved and changed addresses and has since called a priest and so on. And they need to update. So that's kind of where we're at now, is just going through and making sure that the information that's there is current and to see if there's anything they need to add.
Excellent.
And Pamela, I'm just wondering, do you know of instances of congregants using the asset map and sort of any experiences?
We've just gotten that finished since summer, and at our convention we had a table with it on display, and we had quite a bit of interest in it. So, I think we're at the beginning point.
Great.
That's excellent. One of my favorite stories that Karen in Louisiana tells is that in one of their first years, they had always sort of had the same regular folks tabling at their convention, the same people selling the same things and talking about the same things. And
right.
she used the map to invite new ministries to be highlighted. And by doing that, they had a rural church that had not come to convention in years. But because the diocese sort of invited them to bring their Santa on the Bayou ministry to diocesan convention, they came to convention for the first time in many years, and they tabled. So it wasn't that it was a way of using the information in the map to build more cohesion as a diocese and to celebrate this church, which I thought was a real sort of unintended but beautiful sort of outcome of the platform.
Right. Yeah, like I said, we had a lot of interest shown by various people. And so, we're just kind of looking, that was just this last month. So, we're looking to see how to, once again, get in touch and get everything updated with more detail now. So.
That's great.
And I think that's going to be true for many dioceses because triennial meeting for the Episcopal Church was kind of a big wave of people saying yes. So I think in the next 6 months and over this kind of first season of conventions for dioceses, it's going to be very interesting to see how different areas are able to populate. I know that the Diocese of Atlanta is doing a huge push at their convention around this, and so I think once we get kind of lay folks really invested and interested, the more that this will live as a fabulous opportunity for the church.
Great.
We can. And Provincetown, I want to put it out there. Te amo, okay? So we are fighting for you, and but we want to work out the kinks. You'll get the best version of the map, is what I think.
Well, unless there's any other questions, happy to sort of just share a little bit about, obviously there's contact information on the screen. Another thing that I just want to point out is that in a few minutes at the end of, at 8 o'clock, everyone will be receiving an email from Episcopal Church Foundation just asking for some general feedback about tonight's webinar. We're always trying to improve our webinars, so just let us know how we can also improve. But we have a little bit more time left, so if there's any other questions that folks might have or comments, please let us know.
Yeah, we're happy to receive feedback. It's not a personal. Our feelings won't get hurt if you think that this is ridiculous. Julius is typing.
Great.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. You can also, and feel free to email. I expect to get lots of emails from you all tomorrow. So, and then I will forward them all to Katie. Lawrence and Matthew are typing. Okay.
Great.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Great. And Lawrence, I'm sorry you had to step away. Just so you know, in a few days we will be sending a recording of as well as the slides. So hopefully you can catch up then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much. Katie and Tamara, thank you so much for presenting, and this is really exciting. So.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Have a good night.
Night.
Did we just sign out?